I have a friend that lives in Japan. She works at a large international company. She lives in the company dorm, which is pretty common. Most company workers that aren't married live in the company dorm. Once they get married, they move out, but until that happens, they tend to stay in the dorms, which are paid for by the company. It's a pretty good system from some respects, but it does have some downsides. Japan was one of the first countries that benefited quickly and hugely from the Industrial Revolution. One of the first manufacturing systems that the British started to export were these big looms. The big looms took raw cotton and then wove them into fabric. Countries like Japan could import raw cotton, turn them into cloth, and then export them. This allowed countries like Japan, without a lot of natural resources, to create a lot of wealth very quickly, simply by having a very productive workforce. The strategy is simple, and is pretty much the same for any successful business. Buy a bunch of raw materials, turn those lower order goods into higher order goods, and then sell the higher order goods. The more of a difference you can get between the cost of the lower order goods and the sale of the higher order goods, the more profits you can make. This means that the more productive and efficient you are in turning your lower order goods into higher order goods, the more money you can make. One of the direct ways to measure productivity on these cotton weaving looms was how many looms a single person could manage. The basic strategy was to keep the looms running. They would get stuck, and the person working them would have to quickly get them unstuck to keep the cotton flowing through the system. In the US and in the UK, the average worker could handle 8 looms at once. In India, the average worker could handle 4 looms at once. But in Japan, the average worker could handle 12 looms at once, making them 50% more productive, therefore capable of making 50% more profits than the UK or the US. When I lived in the dorms in college, I discovered an accidental hack that helped me not have to fold my clothes. It turned out to be a very common form of manipulation. The first time I did laundry in the dorms, I forgot my clothes in the dryer. I think it was because me and my roommate must have been getting high. Then when I remembered to go get them, somebody had folded them. So I tried it again, and again somebody had folded them. So long as I left them in the dryer, somebody would fold them. Since I was always high when it happened, I thought maybe there were some magic elves or something. There was this one really weird guy who lived in the dorms that first semester. He was an associate professor, and he would always teach at these big universities for a semester or two. He taught anthropology and was always going on these archaeological digs around the world. He would hang out with some of us on the weekends and tell us these stories while we all got high. He said that he was secretly looking for a connection between all ancient rulers of all ancient societies. He had this theory that there was a common thread between all secret technology, that in every society there is the technology that the regular people have access to, and the secret technology that only the elites have access to. He had some theory that there was some common thread among all the elites from all societies from all times, that there was some connection between them. Most historians don't believe this. Most historians believe that things were pretty much randomly discovered, and a lot of the same things were discovered in plenty of places by different people. But this guy was looking for some secret texts or references in the various archaeological digs he would go on. He was going to find the common thread to all these secrets and share this with the world. I don't know if he ever found it, but just sitting and listening to this guy talk was fascinating. This was before the internet, and none of us even had a TV in our dorm rooms. Just this guy and the ideas that were up in his brain. It would be so easy just to fall into a trance and not remember how any of this started or where any of it might be going. Just to kind of let your mind wander wherever it wants to wander and hope that you can follow this enough to keep up. What was happening was I would leave my clothes in the dryer, and then somebody would need the dryer. Then she, it was most likely a girl, would take the clothes out of the dryer and feel guilty. Then to compensate for her guilt, she would fold the clothes. I didn't realize this until one day I did laundry when I wasn't high and asked the girl who was folding somebody else's clothes. You need to use a dryer, but then you feel guilty for moving somebody else's stuff. Turns out this is a very common way humans manipulate other humans. We create these situations where we know how people will act in a certain way and then feel guilty because of the way they just acted. Then we use that guilt to trick them into doing whatever we want. It's kind of a subconscious, spontaneous, interpersonal, covert gaslighting technique. Once you start to look for this, you can find this everywhere. The funny thing about looms in Japan is the particular demographic that was working in those factories. The UK showed up and built the factories, and they needed workers. So most families shipped off their young daughters, since that was pretty common back then, to sell your daughters if you were a poor family to make money. And so the people who built the factories built dorms right next to the factories. And the demographic which made Japan the most fastest wealth-creating country of the Industrial Revolution was junior high school and high school-aged Japanese females. Next time you're talking to somebody about the wonders of the Industrial Revolution, make sure you remember that it all happened because of Japanese high school girls. The system they have now is pretty good so long as you can stay inside of it. High school kids wear high school uniforms and are associated with high school. Then they take a test and hopefully get into a college and become associated with college students. Then they take a test and hopefully get a job at a big company and live in the company dorm and become company men and company women. Then they start a family and make more people to continue to feed the system. So long as you can stay inside the system, you're in pretty good shape. But if you're Japanese and you happen to fall outside of the system, you'll be out for life.